Hey guys, what's up? So today I want to talk about chapter 21 in Genesis, verse 16, and point out a cool concept. It's the idea of italicizing words. And I didn't know this, I learned it today. I don't know how many versions of the Bible, of the King James Version Bible there are, but from what I understand is that anytime a word is italicized, it was added in after the word was actually written from the original translation. So italicized words just add additional context to what is being said, but that might be from a literal interpretation to have the reader understand it maybe a little bit more literally, which dilutes the original meaning and takes you away from the mysticism, which I thought was super freaking cool to learn. So I wanted to point out this one verse, read it a bit, and just share with you what it means, okay? So it says, "And she went and sat her down over against him," which is italicized, "a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him, and lift up her voice and wept." This is Hagar being in the wilderness after Sarah had told Abraham, hey, you have to tell Hagar to get lost, essentially. And it wasn't in a way that was being disrespectful. It was being in a way that Hagar has to alchemize herself to catch up with the rest of Abraham's psyche. Each of these characters, Sarah, Ishmael, Lot, Hagar, they represent aspects of Abraham's inner world, whether it be his mind or his spirit, his emotions, his intuition. So all the females represent the feminine nature, the inner world. All the males represent the masculine nature, the outer world, the action taking, the ego, the mind, okay? So when him is italicized here, what it's implying is literally saying the actual child Ishmael is under the bush and he is a good ways away, and because it's the death of the child, it's implying the literal death because Hagar is literally putting her back against him, okay? Originally, they did not say him. They just let it fly. It says, "And she went and sat her down over against a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against and lift up her voice and wept." So the fact that him isn't there, it might be very subtle, but I think it's actually a little powerful. When you take away the overly describing context of saying him, you take away the literal interpretation of it, and you have to think about what this sentence means. If it's not a literal child, what is she up against? And it's what the child represents. It's not the literal breathing flesh of a human being casted under a bush. Ishmael represents the limiting beliefs born into reality that used to be a part of your old psychology, right? So if you have a psychology about yourself or like a thought about yourself where you're like, only people of this height and I don't know, ethnicity are attracted to me, right? Like let's say you're on dating apps or something. Chances are you will always get that mirrored back to you. But let's say that's not what you want. Let's say you want a more diverse pool. Let's say you want something in particular. You have to start changing the judgment you have in your head towards what you've been experiencing. You have to unprogram yourself. You have to turn your back against him, and you no longer have to believe in that concept. And you might lift up your voice and in the sense of crying and cry out to God, because you have to remove this part of yourself that used to be part of your old identity. And it's part of your identity for such a long time that you mourn it. You start crying, even though you want to cast it under a bush, even though you want to get rid of it. It's still your child. It's still something you created, even though it may no longer serve you. And that familiarity, that nostalgia is exactly why Hagar is upset. She knows she's doing the right thing by transcending, right? She went into the wilderness, she's alchemizing her lower nature beliefs, and she actually has to get rid of Ishmael because now that she has a higher understanding of herself, Ishmael technically no longer serves her, right? Because he's an aspect of a limiting belief. So she puts him under a bush and she's upset about it because that used to be an aspect of her. But in the future, Ishmael becomes a very successful archer and he does well and he's thriving and he's very successful. Ishmael doesn't actually die. He just becomes stronger and more alchemized and he becomes more powerful as a person. So it's not actually death of a child. It's transmuting what that child once was and turning them into a very powerful, in control man, which is very disciplined. And understand, discipline sounds very similar to disciple. Once you discipline your mind, you become a disciple. And that concept is kind of foreshadowing by Ishmael's transformation. So it's not that Hagar is actually killing her son and putting him under a bush. bush. It's that she's actually mourning the loss of what her son once was, but is going to be able to enjoy the way he transmutes himself and turns into something more powerful because Hagar is becoming more powerful.